Spring is in the air here in New Zealand, and it's always so lovely and green here during the spring, so that inspired the green necklace I'm going to make today. Welcome back, my jewellery making friends. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Carol, and on this channel I talk about how easy it is to make your own jewellery. Today's project is a triple strand necklace using a connector in an unexpected way. And I'm going to be using wire wrapped loops, basic loops, and some jump rings to make this necklace. Let's get started, and I will walk you step by step through the process, and I will also talk about everything that you need to make it. Let's talk first about the silverware that I have in front of me. I have some 6mm jump rings, and you will see here that I've already opened them. I like to do that so that I don't have to interrupt my project when I'm making it to put my tools down and open my jump rings. I have some 4mm jump rings here, and these ones I have actually closed because I'm going to need these ones to be closed, these ones to be opened to join them. I have some bead frames. These ones are 15mm by 13mm. I've also got two connectors, and these ones are 14mm. I have a little chain dangle here, and I have a lobster clasp. As well, I've got 33cm of a twist cable chain, and I've also got some 20 gauge silver wire. In terms of beads, I have some 6mm glass electroplated beads, and I have 9 of those. I have 8 of these 6mm check glass drucks in the colour olivine. I have 18 of these 3mm spacer beads in the colour platinum, and I have 6 of these 6x8 faceted glass rondelles in the colour green AB. In terms of tools, we are going to be using 2 pairs of chain nose pliers. We're going to be using some flush cutters, some round nose pliers, and I'm also going to be using my crimping pliers, and I'm not going to be doing any crimping, but I am going to be using these, and I'll show you how in a minute. Now, I will leave links to everything you need in the description box below. I'll also leave a link to a blog post which contains a layout diagram for you. That makes it easier for you to put the necklace together. The first component we're going to make is the bead frame component. Now, this necklace is actually made up of 3 components plus some jump rings. So we'll make this one first, and we're going to do that by taking some of our wire and just cutting a piece off, and I'm just going to straighten it out a bit with my fingers, and I'm going to make a loop in one end. Now, before I do that, I'm not sure if you can see this, but there is a little point on the end of my wire, and I'm going to just chop that off using the flush side of my cutters. So just the very tip, just holding it so that it doesn't fly away, because that's kind of nasty if you get something like that in your foot. And now I have a nice straight cut, and I need the nice straight cut so that I can make a nice round loop. Now, what I'm going to do is take the wire in my pliers, my chain nose pliers, about 1 centimetre from the end, and I'm just going to bend it towards me so that I have a nice right angled bend. Now I'm going to take my round nose pliers, and I'm going to take the wire in the jaws of the pliers, and I'm just going to make sure it's not sticking up. Tuck my thumbnail into the corner there of the bend and press down and turn. Now, if you have not made a loop before, I will leave a link in the description box below, as well as up the top here, a card up the top, to a video I made all about how to make a basic loop. So there's my loop. Now I'm going to feed on some beads and the bead frame. So I'm going to start with one of my 3mm spacer beads, like that. And now I'm going to put the wire through one of the holes of my bead frame, and I'm going to bring it above the other hole. Now I'm going to thread on one of my 6mm electroplated glass beads and another one of my little 3mm spacer beads. And I'm going to pop those inside the bead frame like that. Now, what I'm going to do is pull back until the end of the wire goes through the other hole of that bead frame. And that's what I have now. Now I need to make a loop in the other end, so I'm going to fold the wire over just at right angles. And I'm going to cut about 1 centimetre from the end again, using the flush side of my cutters. Taking my round nose pliers, I'm going to make another loop in this end. And there's my component. This is my bead frame component. Now I need 9 of those, so I'm going to go ahead and make another 8. When you have made your bead frame components, you need to make sure that your loops are all facing the same way. So what you do is you take a loop in each pair of pliers and just twist until your pliers are facing the same way, and then you know that your loops will be too. So I now have 9 of my bead frame components. I'm just going to pop those aside for a minute because I don't need them right now. Next, I'm going to make some wire wrapped loops using my drucks here. So I'm going to take some wire and my chain nose pliers. Now the best tip I can give you when working with wire wrapped loops is to give yourself enough wire on the wrapping end. I used to always scrimp and I would always end up having a real hard time making my loops. So what I'm doing is just bending my wire to a right angle, just like that. Now I'm going to take my round nose pliers and tuck them inside that loop, that corner there, and I'm going to push my wire around and back down. I'm going to just adjust my pliers so that they're now at the top, and I'm going to pull that wire around. Now sometimes, I don't need to in this case, but it's useful to know this, sometimes you can just give it a pull if you don't get it tight enough with your pliers like this. Now I will leave a link in the description box below and a card up the top here for a video all about making wire wrapped loops if you haven't done it before. So what I'm doing is taking my loop that I've just made in my chain nose pliers, and I'm holding it so that the crossover point where the wire crosses is right at the corner or at the side of my pliers. I'm just going to take my other pair of pliers and hold on to the end. I'm going to go round couple of times. I'm actually going to go make 3 wraps. So 1, oops, 2, and 1 more, 3. Okay, oops. So now I've got this, and I need to trim off that end. Taking my flush cutters and trimming the end there, holding it so it doesn't fly away. Now I've got this little point here, this little end sticking out, and this is where my crimping pliers come in. I actually really like to use my crimping pliers to tuck my ends in when I make my wire wrapped loops, and the reason I do that is because they are really fine and they make it tuck in really nicely. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this, but it's actually pointing down, so I can also use these pliers to just squeeze it up like this. And just keep squeezing, keep pushing until it's nicely tucked in. There we go. Okay, so now my end is nicely tucked in. What I'm going to do is thread on a bead, and I'm going to make a wire wrapped loop in the other end. To do that, I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and pop them on top of the bead, and I'm going to bend my wire over so that I have a space for my wrapping. Now I'm going to take my round nose pliers, tuck them into the corner there, and just like before, wrap the wire around and down. Adjust my pliers and pull it all the way around. that's what I have now. Now I'm going to take the loop in my pliers and wrap my loop around, my wire around, sorry. Just like that. And cut off my tail. And just using my pliers to tuck it in. And sometimes when you make these loops, they sometimes get a little skewy, but that's okay. You can always adjust them, and just making sure that the loops are both facing the same way, just like before. Oh, there you go. All right, now I need to make 8 of these, so I will carry on and do that. Okay, so now I have 8 of those. I'm just going to pop those aside as well. And I am going to make up the other components, which are these ones with my faceted rondelles. I'm going to use exactly the same process of making a wire wrapped loop. The first side of the loop is always the hardest of this type of component because you've got the sticky out bit, and I always stab myself with it. Just trimming off the end. That one went flying. And I'm going to take my pliers, my crimping tool here, and just squeeze those up and make them look good. And tuck in the end. Pop on my bead and do exactly the same thing the other side. There's my component. Now I need 6 of those, so I'll go ahead and make 6. Okay, now I have my 6 components made. I'm going to start joining things together because that's all the components that I need to make this necklace. Okay, so I'm going to start with one of my druck components. Then I'm going to pop on one of my bead frames, then a rondelle, and then another bead frame, another rondelle, another bead frame, and lastly a druck. So this is my strand 1. Now notice that I have my bead frames all going the same way. So they have the large bead on the right and the small bead on the left. All right, now I'm going to join those with jump rings. So I'm going to take 2 of my 6mm and 1 of my 4 and join them together. So the first thing I'm going to do is pop on my druck component and a 4mm jump ring. Then I'm going to close up my jump ring. Now if you haven't used jump rings before, I will leave a link in the description box below to a video all about jump rings and also a card up the top. Just double check that they are nicely closed as you go. So that's what I have now. So you can see there my 6mm and my 4mm. Now I am going to take the next 6mm and I'm going to thread on the 4mm jump ring as well as this side of the component. So the side that has the bead, the small bead inside. And then I'm going to close up that jump ring. And double check. I always like to double check my jump rings as I go. So there's the components joined together, and I'm just going to carry on and join all of these components using that same technique with the 3 jump rings. Now I do suggest after each addition that you do lay it down on your board just so that you can check that you're still getting everything in the right order. There's strand 1 completed. Now I'm going to lay out my beads for the second strand. I'll just pop that up there, and they all start with a drag as well, and then a bead frame. Now my bead frames are still going exactly the same way as they did before, and then I'm going to put another drag. And this time I've got my rondelle in the center and the drag, and then another bead frame and one last drag. So that's the layout for the second strand. Now the only difference here is that between the 2 end components I'm going to be using more jump rings, and the reason I'm doing that is so that it sits properly, because if I hadn't, it would be exactly the same length as this one, and that is not okay, for it won't sit right. Okay, so using my jump rings, I'm going to start by adding my drag component and a 4mm jump ring. And then I'm closing that up. Now this time I'm going to add another 6mm and another 4. Now I'm going to add another 6. So there it is. It has 3 6mm jump rings and 2 4mm jump rings. Okay, now I'm going to, I closed it up, didn't I? I closed it up without putting my next component on. So open the jump ring and pop on your component. Or do it at the same time as you're supposed to. There we go. All right, now I'm just going to use my 2 jump rings and my 2 6s and my 1 4 to join the rest of the components up to here. All right, now I have all of my components together except the end drag, and I'm going to put an extra grouping of jump rings here or here. So a 6mm and a 4mm. And I'm adding another 6 and another 4. Now finally I'm adding my 4mm to my new 6mm jump ring, and I'm adding my drag. I'm just going to close that up. There's strand 2, and let's lay out strand 3. So I start with a druck on either end and a bead frame. And then I am going to put 2 more bead frames and 3 of my rondelle components. And I'm going to join those together just with the 3 jump rings, just like before. Now I have all of my strands made up. Now it's time to join them together. Just before I join everything together, I'd just like to say, if you are enjoying this video and you would like to see more of my projects, it would be really fantastic if you would subscribe to my channel, like this video, and of course ring that little notification bell so that every time I upload a new project, you will be notified. We're going to use the connectors to join everything up. So to do this, I'm going to be using some 4mm jump rings. I initially tried this with 6, but it looked way too bulky, so I'm going to use 4s. Now I'm just going to open my jump ring here, thread on one of the loops of my connector, and thread on the end of my first strand. And close my jump ring. Now I'm going to repeat that process with the second strand. You do need to make sure that you get them in the right order. If you just remember, the top one has the bead frame in the middle and the other 2 don't. That's the easiest way. As I said, I'll leave you a layout diagram so that you can see exactly what I've done here. While this necklace was inspired by spring, I'm sure it's kind of fall colours as well if you live in the northern hemisphere. Greens always, really, any season. There's my first lot of first connector connected. Now I'm going to repeat that with this end. Now you will notice that I am lying my necklace down between the additions, and the reason I'm doing that is so that I don't get it twisted and that I make sure I'm adding them on the right side. Okay, so there is my necklace with the connectors. Next I'm going to add the chain. Now I've already cut my chain into 3 pieces. I cut 2 at 13 centimeters and 1 at 5. At least I think they're 13. Let's just measure them just to make sure. Yes, 13 centimeters. Okay, so I'm going to attach this with another 6mm jump ring. No, 4mm jump ring. Now you could use a 6 or a 4 for this. Doesn't really matter, up to you. Just popping that one on and popping the connector on and closing that up. And repeat for the other side. So the last thing that we're going to do is put on our clasp, and I'm actually going to add an extender chain to this one as well. So to do that, I'm going to use, now this time I am going to use a 6mm, and the reason I do that is because I like to pop my clasp into a 6mm, not a 4. Now this little clasp here actually comes with 2 4s, so I'm going to use that one as well. So just taking my 6 and I'm popping on the end of the chain and the clasp. As well as the other piece of chain. And closing up my jump ring. If I can get a hold of it. That's what I have. Now I'm going to put the dangle on this end. I'm going to use another 4mm to do that as well. Do you like to use necklaces with extenders, or do you prefer to just make them the right size when you make them? Let me know in the comment section below. So popping on to the 4mm at the end of the chain and the dangle, and then closing that up. And then I just need to add the other end. And I'm going to use a 6 for that one as well. Whoa, hold up. While I was editing this, I realized I had somehow managed to attach the 6mm jump ring and the 4mm jump ring, which is not what I intended to do. What I did intend to do was attach the chain and the extender using a 6mm jump ring and discard the second 4mm jump ring. So this is what you're trying to achieve. Oh well. Now I'm actually going to remove the 4mm that comes with this clasp because I prefer to put my clasp into a 6mm. So I'm going to take my 6mm and add on both ends of my chain, so my chain and the end of my dangle or extender, and do it up. I just find that 4mm, trying to do up a clasp into a 4mm is just too challenging for my fingers. So I prefer a 6. What do you like? Let me know in the comment section below. Just do it up. I used that connector in an interesting way by turning it on its side so it was a diamond rather than a square. Let me know in the comments section below, did I do the right thing, or should I have used a triangle one for the 3 strands? Just leave me a comment. I just like to get feedback. Also check us out on Facebook and Instagram, and remember, if you enjoyed this, subscribe, hit that notification bell and give me that cheeky thumbs up. If you're interested in making any of the jewellery I'm wearing today, I will leave a link in the description box for the tutorial for the necklace and the bracelet. Thank you so much for watching today. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you again soon.